You stand at the threshold of an ancient world, where the very air shifts with untold stories. The scent of damp earth and decaying leaves fills your lungs, and overhead, a canopy of gnarled branches weaves a perpetual twilight. This is not merely a collection of trees, it is a primal entity stretching across ancient Europe, whispering secrets older than stone. For countless centuries, these vast, impenetrable woods were more than just wild lands. They were realms of immense power and profound terror, holding sway over the imaginations and very lives of those who dared to dwell nearby. You feel it now, the palpable weight of forgotten gods, the faint cries of shadowed sacrifices, the unseen eyes of beasts and spirits watching from the deep. These are the cursed forests, where legends took root and darkness truly thrived. The darkness you sense, which so palpably surrounds you, is more than just the absence of sunlight filtering through the dense canopy. It is a presence heavy and ancient, woven into the very fabric of these woods. You feel the cool, damp air on your skin, the hush of a world removed from human concerns. The only sounds are the rustle of unseen creatures in the undergrowth, the distant caw of a raven, and the steady rhythmic drip of water from leaf to moss-covered stone. Every shadow seems to hold a secret, every twist of a root a hidden meaning. Imagine yourself centuries ago, standing on the fringes of a primordial forest that stretched for hundreds, even thousands of miles. This was a Europe almost entirely cloaked in trees. The Hercynian forest, the Black Forest, the ancient woods of Caledonia. They were not picturesque groves for leisure. They were formidable barriers, vast and untamed, the wilderness pushing back against every nascent attempt at human settlement. Your village, perhaps, clings precariously to the edge, a tiny island of warmth and light in an ocean of green and black. But even there you are never truly safe. The forest breathes and its breath is cold. To step into these woods was to enter a different world, one governed by rules far older and more brutal than any human law. You might enter seeking game, foraging for berries, or cutting timber. But you knew the risks. Every step you took deepened your vulnerability. The sunlight, already scarce, quickly vanished behind the impenetrable roof of branches. The familiar paths quickly disappeared, swallowed by tangled vines and fallen giants. You would find yourself disoriented, the trees all looking the same, an endless, bewildering maze. Getting lost here meant a slow, terrifying descent into despair, where every rustle could be a predator, every shadow a malevolent spirit. For the hunter, these woods were both a bounty and a death trap. Wild boar, deer, and smaller game provided sustenance, but they were not easily won. You would track your prey for days, pushing deeper into the unknown, always with the gnawing fear that you were the one being hunted. The ancient forests were the undisputed domain of apex predators. Massive brown bears, their fur thick and shaggy, roamed freely. Packs of wolves, their eyes gleaming like embers in the perpetual gloom, moved with chilling coordination, their howls echoing through the silent trees, a sound that would curdle the blood in your veins and send you scrambling for the nearest tree or shelter. These creatures were not just animals. They were forces of nature, primal embodiments of the forest's wild heart, demanding respect and instilling raw, gut-wrenching terror. Beyond the clear and present danger of tooth and claw, there was a deeper, more insidious fear. The fear of the unseen. Ancient Europeans saw the world as alive, imbued with spirits and deities. And nowhere was this more apparent than in the forests. Every tree, every rock, every stream had a consciousness, a watchful eye. You felt it as you pushed through the undergrowth, the distinct impression of being observed, a sensation that prickled the hairs on the back of your neck. Was it the spirit of the old oak, disturbed by your passage? Was it a mischievous sprite, eager to lead you astray? Or something far more ancient, something that resented the very presence of humanity? These were the whispering woods, not just because of the wind sighing through the leaves, but because of the voices you thought you heard just beyond the edge of hearing, the faint calls that mimic human cries, luring the unwary deeper into the green abyss. You might hear the distant ring of an axe only to find nothing there. You might glimpse a fleeting shape in your peripheral vision, only for it to vanish when you turned your head. These were the tricks of the forest, or perhaps, the work of the spirits that dwelled within. Early cultures believed in a pantheon of forest deities. The green man, horned gods of the hunt, dryads and hamadryads tied to specific trees. They were powerful, capricious, and often vengeful. To offend a forest spirit could mean crop failure, illness, or even death. So you learned to walk with respect, to leave offerings of food or small trinkets at the base of ancient trees, to utter quiet prayers for safe passage. You knew not to cut down certain sacred trees, or to disturb particular groves, for fear of unleashing a divine wrath that could ripple through your entire community. Sacred groves, or nematons, were especially potent. These were clearings deep within the darkest parts of the forest, consecrated spaces where druids performed their enigmatic rites. You would approach such a place with a mixture of reverence and dread. The air would feel different, charged with an almost palpable energy. Perhaps you would witness a sacrifice, an offering of animal or, whispered in hushed tones, even human life, intended to appease the forest gods, to ensure a bountiful harvest or victory in battle. The blood that soaked into the earth was a potent reminder of the forest's demands, a testament to its fearsome power over life and death. You would leave quickly, your heart pounding, the images seared into your memory, the scent of blood and wood smoke clinging to your clothes. The vastness of these forests also made them ideal refuges for those who lived outside the bounds of society. Outlaws, bandits, renegades, and fugitives found sanctuary beneath the dense canopy. To stumble upon their hidden camps was to risk your life, for they were desperate and ruthless, often preying on unwary travelers or venturing out to raid nearby villages. The fear of human predators added another layer of terror to the already daunting task of traversing these wild lands. You would stick to the main, well-trodden routes, if such a luxury existed, and travel in groups whenever possible, always with weapons ready. As the centuries passed and stories were told around flickering hearth fires, the abstract fears of the forest solidified into concrete monsters. The rustling in the leaves became the shuffling gait of a troll, hulking and malicious, guarding ancient treasures or demanding tribute. The shifting shadows became the form of a werewolf, a man cursed to transform under the full moon, his savage hunger unleashed. The unearthly calls became the song of a siren or a banshee, luring travelers to their doom. Witches, skilled in dark arts and drawing power from the ancient trees, were said to dwell in secluded clearings, brewing potions and casting curses. These myths were not mere fairy tales. They were cautionary lessons, expressions of a deep-seated, collective anxiety. They gave a name and a face to the formless dread that permeated the woods. You grew up hearing these stories, they were etched into your psyche from childhood. You knew not to stray from the path, not to pick certain fungi, not to answer strange calls, not to enter the forest after dark. These were the rules of survival, passed down through generations, born from centuries of encounters with the forest's raw, untamed power. The very geography of Europe was defined by these forests. They were the ultimate natural barriers, shaping trade routes, hindering armies, and isolating communities. Empires rose and fell, but the great forests endured, indifferent to the transient struggles of humankind. They carved up the continent, creating distinct cultural pockets and fostering diverse legends. To cross a vast forest was an epic journey, fraught with peril, a true test of endurance and courage. Many who entered never emerged. Their bones, perhaps, still lie beneath the moss, claimed by the earth, watched over by the silent, ancient trees. The psychological toll of living on the edge of such immensity was profound. The forest was an ever-present reminder of humanity's fragility, a dark, primal force that could reclaim civilization with astonishing speed if vigilance ever faltered. It was the antithesis of order, a realm of chaos and the unknown, where the rules of man held no sway. You looked out from your village at the unbroken line of trees, and you saw not just wood for burning or land to be cleared, but a vast living entity that held both the promise of resources and the terror of oblivion. Its power was undeniable, its mysteries unfathomable. These were not just trees, they were the very soul of ancient Europe, a soul both revered and deeply, profoundly feared. Its ancient dread lingered, a chilling breath on the wind, a silent testament to its enduring power over human hearts and minds. That enduring power, that chilling breath on the wind, was felt most keenly by those who sought to understand, to appease, to even harness the forest's ancient will. You step now into the hushed twilight realm of the Druids, the enigmatic spiritual leaders of the Celtic peoples. They were the philosophers, the judges, the healers, and the seers. But above all, they were the keepers of the forest's deepest secrets, the interpreters of its silent language. For them, the forest was not merely a place of dread, but a vast, living temple, a sacred library of arcane knowledge etched into the bark of trees and the whispers of the leaves. Imagine yourself walking beside a robed figure, their stride confident, their gaze discerning. The path beneath your feet is barely a trail, leading you deeper into an ancient oak grove. Here, the canopy is so dense that only flecks of sunlight penetrate, dappling the mossy floor. The air is cool and moist, thick with the scent of damp earth, decaying leaves, and something else, something primal and electric. You hear the rustle of invisible creatures, the distant call of a bird, but mostly silence. A profound, watchful silence that seems to absorb all sound. These groves were not just meeting places, they were the very heart of Druidic practice. Each ancient oak, with its gnarled limbs reaching like supplicating arms to the heavens, was considered a conduit to the divine. The Druids believed that the gods themselves resided within these trees, their spirits intertwined with the wood and the roots that delved deep into the earth. It was here, amidst these towering sentinels, that the veil between worlds thinned, allowing for communion, for prophecy, for the sacred rites that shaped the lives of their people. You watch as the Druid approaches a massive oak, its trunk wider than a wagon. They place a hand upon its bark, their eyes closed, a silent conversation passing between them and the ancient entity. You feel a faint tremor in the air, a sense of immense power contained within the silent wood. This was their altar, their cathedral, their classroom. From the forest, they drew their wisdom of herbs and healing, their understanding of the stars, their profound knowledge of the cycles of life and death. The forest was the great teacher, and the Druids were its most devoted students. Their rituals were as varied as the forest itself. Some were ceremonies of healing, where you might witness a Druid gathering specific plants at dawn, chanting softly over them, their voice weaving a spell of restoration. Others were rites of divination, where animal entrails might be read by the flickering light of a bonfire, the shadows dancing ominously on the ancient trees, revealing glimpses of the future. You could almost smell the smoke, hear the hypnotic rhythm of their voices rising and falling, feel the anticipation in the air as they sought answers from the unseen. The cycle of the seasons, the turning of the sun and moon, these were celebrated with profound reverence. You might find yourself at a festival marking the summer solstice, where bonfires blazed high into the night, their flames licking at the darkness, symbols of purification and renewal. The air would be filled with the joyous cries of the community, the thrumming of drums, the earthy smell of roasting meat. Yet even in celebration, there was an undercurrent of awe, a deep respect for the powerful forces that governed their world, forces embodied by the towering trees around them. But the forest held a darker face, and the Druids, as its priests, were also privy to its grimmest demands. For all its sacred beauty, the ancient European forest was also a place of shadowed sacrifices, of offerings made to appease the hungry earth, the unpredictable gods, or to secure a people's future. The ancient texts, though often biased, speak of human sacrifice. Archaeological discoveries, such as the haunting bog bodies unearthed across northern Europe, seem to lend a chilling weight to these accounts. You might imagine yourself at the edge of a clearing, the air heavy with an unspoken dread. The moon, perhaps, is full, casting long, spectral shadows through the trees. The druids stand robed and solemn, their faces grim in the flickering torchlight. A hush falls over the gathered people, broken only by the crackle of a nearby fire and the rustle of leaves in the wind, sounding almost like a sigh. This was not a ritual of joy, but one of profound solemnity, of a terrible necessity. The offering, whether an animal of great value or, in the most dire circumstances, a human life, was considered the ultimate act of devotion, a desperate plea for divine intervention. It was a transaction of blood and spirit, meant to restore balance, to avert catastrophe, to ensure the fertility of the land or the victory in battle. The belief was that by offering the most precious thing, life itself, the spirits of the forest and the gods above would be appeased, their wrath averted, their blessings bestowed. Think of the chilling discoveries. The perfectly preserved bodies pulled from peat bogs, sometimes with signs of ritualistic killing. A garrote around the neck, a deep cut to the throat, a heavy blow to the head. The circumstances of their deaths, often accompanied by offerings of food or artifacts, suggest not murder but sacrifice. These individuals, perhaps captives, criminals, or even chosen volunteers, were delivered to the earth, a final, ultimate communion with the powerful, unyielding forces of the forest. They became part of its silent, enduring mystery, their fates absorbed into the very soil. The Druids therefore held immense and terrifying power. They were not merely spiritual guides but arbiters of life and death, interpreters of divine will in a world where the gods were believed to be intimately involved in human affairs. They understood that the forest, in its vastness and wildness, embodied both immense life-giving power and a profound, indiscriminate cruelty. Their rituals, both celebratory and fearsome, were designed to navigate this duality, to channel the forest's energy for the good of their people, even if it demanded the highest price. You leave the sacred grove, the image of the silent, watchful trees etched into your mind. The air still feels charged, the scent of ancient rituals lingering. The Druids and their profound, often terrifying relationship with the cursed forests of ancient Europe reveal a world where the boundary between the sacred and the terrifying was porous, where the whisper of the wind could be the voice of a god, and the rustle of leaves, a harbinger of fate. The forest was their church, their court, and sometimes their execution ground. Its power was not merely feared, but meticulously, sometimes brutally, respected. You have felt the chilling power of ancient rituals, the breath of gods and spirits that permeated every moss-covered stone and gnarled root. But the forest held more than just unseen forces. It bred things, beings of flesh and shadow, that walked its hidden paths, creatures that haunted the waking hours and tormented the deepest sleeps of those who dared to trespass. This was not merely a place of spiritual reckoning. It was a hunting ground, a lair, a realm where the monstrous was undeniably real. Imagine yourself now, deeper still within the ancient woods, the canopy so thick above you that only fractured slivers of sunlight pierce the gloom. The air grows heavier here, laden with the scent of damp earth, decaying leaves, and something else, something primal and untamed. Every snapping twig beneath your worn leather boots, every rustle in the undergrowth, sends a jolt of unease through your spine. You are no longer merely observing. You are experiencing the profound, inescapable fear that birthed the legends of beasts. The people of ancient Europe did not just fear the forest. They understood its teeth and claws, its deceptive beauty, and its sudden, savage brutality. They knew that within its boundless expanse lurked beings that defied easy explanation, creatures that were more than mere animals, infused with the forest's own dark magic and ancient power. Listen closely. Can you hear it? A distant howl, not quite a wolf, too deep, too prolonged, too filled with an almost human despair, yet also a predatory triumph. This is the sound of the werewolf, the lycanthrope, a horror born from the very heart of the wild. You know the stories whispered around dying campfires. A human, cursed or transformed, losing their humanity with the rise of the full moon, shedding skin and sanity to become a ravening beast. Its eyes glow with an unholy light, its fur matted with the blood of its prey, its fangs capable of tearing through bone and sinew. To encounter such a creature in the trackless wilds was to face not just a predator, but a perversion, a mirror reflecting humanity's own dark potential for savagery. Your heart pounds in your chest as you imagine the chilling hunt, the relentless pursuit through the moonlit trees, knowing that your own species has turned against you, a living embodiment of the forest's cruelest trick. But the lycanthrope was not the only terror that prowled these primeval woods. Think of the Huldafolk, the Hidden Folk, or the Skagsra, the forest spirit of Scandinavian folklore. They are beautiful, sometimes impossibly so, their forms flowing and ethereal, their voices like the sweetest bird song. They might appear as a stunning woman with a hollow back, or a man with the tail of a fox. They beckon you deeper, promising solace, love, or hidden knowledge. But their embrace is fatal, their love a delusion. You feel a strange pull, an inexplicable urge to follow that haunting melody deeper into the tangled growth, away from any known path. They are the forest's deceptive lure, the pretty face hiding a trap, drawing lost travelers to their doom, leaving their bones to bleach in some forgotten clearing. Their power lies in enchantment, in the manipulation of perception, making the familiar foreign and the dangerous enticing. You have heard tales of men who vanished without a trace, only to be found years later, withered and mad, muttering about an impossible beauty who led them astray. Further south, in the dense forests of Germania and Gaul, lurked creatures of a more corporeal, if no less terrifying nature. The forest giants, sometimes solitary, sometimes dwelling in crude stone hovels hidden amongst the oldest trees. These were not the gentle giants of later fairy tales, but brutal, colossal beings, strong enough to rip trees from the earth. Their minds were simple, often malevolent, driven by hunger and territorial rage. You hear the heavy, thudding footsteps in the distance, shaking the very ground beneath you. A broken branch, too high for any normal beast, hangs precariously. You see the rough, hand-hewn clubs, the immense footprints in the soft earth. To cross paths with one of these beings meant certain death, crushed beneath a monstrous fist or torn limb from limb. Their existence was a testament to the raw, untamed power of the forest to breed not just life, but colossal, destructive force. They were the mountains made flesh, the ancient, enduring rage of the wilderness given form. Then there were the truly ancient things, the forest phantoms that seemed to be extensions of the trees themselves. Dryads, yes, but not always benevolent. Some were the protective spirits of the oldest oaks, fiercely guarding their domains, lashing out at any who dared to defile them. You might feel a sudden, inexplicable gust of wind, though no breeze stirs the surrounding leaves. A branch might snap and fall perilously close, as if deliberately aimed. An ancient tree might seem to twist and watch you with a gnarled, knowing face. These were not monsters of blood and bone, but expressions of the forest's ancient sentience, its watchful, often vengeful, spirit. You tread lightly, feeling the weight of unseen eyes, the silent judgment of centuries of growth. Beyond the specific creatures, there was the pervasive feeling of being watched, of something lurking just beyond the edge of your vision, in the deepest shadows between the tree trunks. The forest itself seemed to conspire against you. The branches reach like grasping claws, the roots trip you, the path becomes obscured, leading you deeper into confusion. The hoot of an owl might carry a warning or a curse. The rustle of leaves might be a forest spirit whispering a lie, or a predatory beast drawing closer. The forests were a realm of transition, where the natural world bled into the supernatural. Animals that were common and known in the villages took on terrifying, exaggerated forms here. Bears were not just bears. They were embodiments of primal ferocity, perhaps even shape-shifting shamans. Wolves were not just wolves. They were the teeth of the forest, the messengers of winter and famine, sometimes possessed by vengeful spirits. The distinction blurred, making every encounter potentially deadly, every sound a harbinger of something more. You carry this knowledge with you, this ancient understanding that the wilderness was not empty, but teeming with life, both seen and unseen, both mundane and miraculous, both benign and malevolent. It shaped the superstitions, the precautions, and the desperate prayers of the people who lived on its fringes. The fear of these cryptids was not a simple, irrational dread. It was a deeply ingrained respect for the potent, unpredictable, and often terrifying inhabitants of the green world. To venture into the cursed forests was to gamble with your very soul, to pit your mortal resolve against the ancient, monstrous heart of the wild. You hear the subtle shift in the wind, a whisper that sounds like a name, your name carried on the breath of the towering trees. You are not alone, and you never were. The unseen presences, those lingering spirits in monstrous forms, are not the only things that stir when the sun dips below the jagged horizon, plunging the forest into a deep, impenetrable gloom. No, there are other forces, more overtly human, yet equally steeped in ancient power and forbidden knowledge, that awaken with the fading light. You stand at the edge of the woods. The last sliver of twilight bleeds from the western sky, painting the uppermost branches a fleeting bruised purple before surrendering entirely to the encroaching darkness. The wind, which during the day merely rustled the leaves, now whispers with a different voice, a sibilant hiss that seems to carry forgotten words. You pull your cloak tighter, the chill seeping not just into your bones but into your very spirit. This is not the familiar cold of evening. It is the cold of anticipation, of apprehension, of a world turning on its hidden axis. As the moon, if it deigns to show its face through the heavy canopy, casts long, distorted shadows that writhe and dance like spectral figures, you feel the shift. This is the witching hour. A time when the veil between worlds thins to the transparency of breath on cold air. A time when the boundaries of the mundane world blur, when the laws of nature are suspended, and when magic, raw and untamed, flows most freely. It is a time both feared and revered, a period of profound potency when the unseen becomes acutely palpable. You move deeper now, compelled by a strange, almost hypnotic curiosity, your breath catching in your throat with each snap of a twig beneath your worn boots. The air grows heavy, thick with the scent of damp earth, decaying leaves and something else, something subtly unfamiliar. Is it wood smoke? Or perhaps the pungent aroma of herbs burning, their volatile essences carried on the languid air? Your senses heighten, straining to interpret the symphony of the night. The hoot of an owl seems less like a bird's cry and more like a resonant pronouncement. The distant bark of a fox sounds like a challenging summons. For generations, the people of ancient Europe spoke of women who communed with the spirits of the forest, who drew power from the roots of ancient trees and the depths of hidden springs. They were the cunning women, the healers, the seers, and sometimes the feared sorceresses. They were the witches, and the forest was their sanctuary, their laboratory, their temple. Here, away from the prying eyes of villages and the rigid doctrines of nascent faiths, they practiced their craft. Imagine a clearing, deep within the oldest part of the forest, where the ancient trees stand sentinel, their gnarled branches reaching towards the sky like arthritic fingers. You approach it slowly, carefully, hidden by the dense undergrowth. Through a screen of ferns and thorny bushes, you glimpse a flickering reddish light. It is not a campfire for travelers. This light pulses with an internal, mystical energy. The air hums with a low vibration, a sound you feel more in your chest than hear with your ears. The source of the light is a bonfire, not a roaring blaze, but a carefully tended pyre, its smoke spiraling upwards, carrying with it the aroma of mugwort, wormwood, and other herbs whose names are spoken only in hushed tones. Around it, figures move. Cloaked in dark, simple garments that seem to melt into the shadows, they move with a fluidity that is both graceful and unsettling. These are the members of a coven. A gathering of those who walk the path of the old ways, who tap into the primordial energies of the earth and the heavens. You observe from your hidden vantage point. Their voices are not loud, but a collective murmur, a rhythmic chant that rises and falls like the tide. It is a language you do not understand, ancient words woven with intent and power. Sometimes a single voice rises, sharp and clear, cutting through the night, a command or an invocation directed at something unseen, something beyond your comprehension. Their hands are busy. You see them scattering powders into the flames, each puff sending sparks dancing into the inky blackness. They trace symbols in the earth with staves of polished wood. They hold aloft bundles of herbs, dried flowers, and perhaps even stranger objects, letting the moonlight imbue them with potent energy. They might be seeking visions, attempting to influence the weather, healing the sick through arcane means, or perhaps, for those with darker intentions, weaving curses that will ensnare their enemies. The stories whispered around hearth fires often spoke of children lost to the woods at night, only to be found days later, unharmed but forever changed, speaking in tongues or possessing strange new abilities. Or of villagers who stumbled upon a coven ritual, only to return to their homes afflicted by inexplicable ailments, or blessed with unusual luck, depending on the nature of the encounter and the disposition of the witches. The forest in these tales was not merely a backdrop but an active participant, its trees bending to their will, its creatures acting as their familiars or messengers. You notice details. A carving on an ancient oak, too worn by time to be fully deciphered, yet clearly human-made, perhaps a marker or a ward. A circle of stones, half buried in the moss, their surfaces smooth and cold to the touch, indicating a place of long-standing power. The sound of a drum, a low, steady heartbeat that seems to emanate from the very ground beneath you, drawing you further into its trance-like rhythm. It is a call to ancestral memory, a connection to a time when the spirits of the earth were worshipped and appeased with equal measure of fear and reverence. The witches, in their various forms, were inextricably linked to the natural world. They understood its cycles, its rhythms, its hidden pharmacopoeia. They knew which roots to dig under a full moon, which leaves to gather at dawn, and which incantations to whisper when the wind blew from the north. The forest provided them with their tools, their ingredients, and their isolation. It offered them the sacred space where the boundaries of the ordinary world could be easily transgressed. As the ritual intensifies, the chanting grows more fervent. The air itself crackles with an invisible energy. You might feel a tingling sensation on your skin, the hairs on your arms standing on end. The shadows deepen, seeming to lengthen and contort into grotesque shapes that hint at other presences, unseen guardians or invoked spirits. The flickering firelight casts their faces in shifting masks of shadow and glow, making them appear ancient, powerful, and utterly beyond the understanding of the common folk. This is not a place for the uninitiated, nor for the faint of heart. To interrupt such a gathering would be to invite wrath, a curse that could follow you and your lineage for generations. To observe, as you are doing now, is to steal a glimpse behind the curtain of the world, to witness a facet of ancient reality that was intentionally hidden from the everyday. It is to understand that the forest curses were not always arbitrary acts of nature or monstrous beasts. Sometimes they were carefully crafted by human hands, imbued with potent magic, and unleashed with purpose by those who commanded forces beyond mortal ken. The witching hour culminates in a crescendo of energy. Perhaps the bonfire flares suddenly, casting an intensely bright light that banishes the shadows for a brief, blinding moment, only to plunge the clearing back into an even deeper darkness. Perhaps a collective sigh escapes the coven members, a release of pent-up energy as their ritual concludes. Then, slowly, the figures begin to disperse, fading back into the forest as silently and mysteriously as they appeared. You are left alone again in the clearing, now silent save for the crackle of the dying embers. But you are not the same. The air still hums with residual energy. The scent of strange herbs clings to your clothing. The echoes of the chants resonate in your mind. You have witnessed a part of the cursed forest's heart, a manifestation of its ancient power channeled through human will. The knowledge settles deep within you. The forest is not just a place of wild animals and natural dangers, nor merely cryptids and spirits. It is also the domain of those who wield its primal power, those who choose to dance with the shadows and summon the unseen. And their influence, their curses and their blessings, can extend far beyond the tree line, reaching into the very fabric of your life, whether you know it or not. The canopy above you, once a mere roof of leaves, now feels like a watchful eye, an accomplice in secrets untold, holding ancient powers and forbidden knowledge. The forest's secrets are not only guarded by those who walk among the trees, but by those who never truly left them. You feel it now, a shift in the air, a subtle chill that has nothing to do with the fading warmth of the embers, and everything to do with what lingers unseen. As you move deeper into the wildwood, the oppressive silence is occasionally broken, not by the sounds of living creatures, but by echoes of what once was. A faint sigh carried on a wind that doesn't rustle leaves. A distant, melancholic whisper that seems to coil around your thoughts, not quite forming words, but filling your mind with a pervasive sense of sorrow, a weight that presses down from above. You are entering the domain of the spectral sentinels, the lost souls of ancient Europe's cursed forests. These are not merely apparitions or fleeting shadows, though they can manifest in such elusive forms. They are the indelible imprints of tragedy, the echoes of lives abruptly extinguished, and the lingering residue of intense emotions woven into the very fabric of the trees and soil. They are the ancient spirits, bound to the land by circumstance, by duty, or by a curse even older than the oldest oak. They are a profound reason these woods are truly cursed, a living testament to the suffering and sacrifice they have witnessed across millennia. Their very existence reinforces the barrier between your world and theirs, a constant, unsettling presence. You might feel a sudden, inexplicable drop in temperature, a cold spot that chills you to the bone even on a summer's day. It is not the breeze, it is the presence of an entity drawing warmth from the living world, a silent, ravenous hunger for what you possess. Perhaps you catch a fleeting glimpse of movement at the periphery of your vision, a shape that dissipates the moment you turn your head to confront it, leaving only the dark, indifferent trunks of the trees. A flash of pale, ethereal light, a shimmer in the deep gloom, or the distinct, unsettling impression of being watched from behind the gnarled trunks and impenetrable thickets. These are the subtle manifestations of the forest's true inhabitants, those who watch without eyes and judge without words. These forests, over centuries, have absorbed countless tragedies. They have been battlegrounds where tribes clashed and empires fell, their ancient trees scarred by the iron of forgotten wars. You walk over ground that has soaked up the blood of warriors, of the innocent, of those deemed sacrifices to appease older, darker gods. The spirits of these fallen remain, tethered to the very earth that swallowed their last breath, their final agonies vibrating in the soil beneath your feet. They are not always malevolent, but their presence is a heavy cloak of sorrow and disturbance, a constant low hum of ancient pain. Imagine the translucent specter of a Roman legionary, forever marching a ghostly patrol route, his spectral armor clanking faintly through the mists, a sound only you can discern, a sound that raises the hairs on your neck. Or the wailing phantom of a Celtic chieftain, lamenting a lost battle, his mournful cry woven into the very howl of the wind that whips through the highest branches. These echoes are not just sounds, they are emotional imprints designed to unsettle, to warn, to remind you of the suffering that saturates this place. Beyond the warriors there are the lost. The travelers who strayed from the designated path, swallowed by the forest's deceptive allure, succumbing to hunger, thirst, or the predatory beasts that roam within its depths. Their despair, their fear, their final moments of agonizing loneliness, they all leave an indelible trace. You might hear their desperate pleas, faint and far away, calling for help that will never come, their voices thin and reedy as the wind. You might see their forms, translucent and flickering, eternally searching for a way out, forever repeating the journey that led to their demise. They are the wanderers, bound to the very paths they sought to escape, their voices mingling with the rustling leaves, a chorus of forgotten anguish, a perpetual lament for a life unlived. Then there are those whose fates are inextricably intertwined with the ancient rituals performed beneath the watchful branches. Perhaps a wise druid, sacrificing their own life for the forest's power, whose spirit now guards a sacred grove, a spectral guardian of forbidden knowledge, whose gaze feels like a physical touch. Or the victims of dark sorcery, whose souls were bound to the land by curses so potent they transcend death itself, condemned to an eternal vigil. These are the spectral sentinels of the wildwood, not always acting with conscious intent, but their very existence a perpetual warning, a shimmering barrier against intrusion. You might feel a sudden, inexplicable dread as you approach a particular ancient standing stone, a premonition of danger that forces you to instinctively recoil, a cold hand on your shoulder urging you back. This is the subtle, powerful influence of a spirit, defending its timeless post, its ancient secrets. These entities are not bound by the same physical rules as the living. They are fragments of what was, sustained by the energy of the land, by the fear of the living, and by the sheer momentum of their unfinished existences. They can manipulate the environment in subtle, unnerving ways. A sudden gust of wind where no natural breeze should be, extinguishing your torch, plunging you into absolute, suffocating darkness, leaving you disoriented and vulnerable. The distinct rustling of leaves that sounds undeniably like footsteps approaching. Yet nothing is there, no branch moves, no creature stirs. The pervasive, distinct scent of decay, of damp earth and grave flowers, that appears and vanishes without explanation, stinging your nostrils with its ghostly presence. You walk through a glade where the trees grow twisted and unusually close together, their branches forming a perpetually shadowed canopy that seems to block out the very light of day. Here the air itself feels heavy, thick with unseen presences. You can almost taste the sorrow, the loneliness, the ancient despair. It clings to your clothes, seeps into your skin, a spiritual miasma. You feel an oppressive weight on your chest, a sense of being scrutinized by countless unseen eyes, an invisible pressure that makes each breath a struggle. This is the dwelling place of those who died with unresolved grievances, whose anger or regret prevents them from finding peace. They are not necessarily hostile, but their psychic residue can be overwhelming, manifesting as sudden bursts of inexplicable sadness, rage, or overwhelming paranoia within you, distorting your own thoughts and emotions. Sometimes the forest itself seems to breathe with their collective memory. The ancient oaks and yews, having stood for centuries, are silent witnesses to every birth, every death, every ritual performed beneath their boughs. They become conduits for these lost souls, their gnarled roots tapping into the very ley lines of memory and sorrow that crisscross the land. When you touch the rough bark of such a tree, you might feel a faint vibration, not of wood, but of lingering energy, a whisper of a story that ended tragically, a life cut short. You might even hear faint voices within the low hum of the forest, weaving in and out of the natural sounds, forming fragmented phrases and languages long dead, their meaning lost to time, but their emotion palpable. Imagine standing on a high ridge overlooking a valley shrouded in thick, swirling mist. Below you the forest stretches out, an ocean of ancient green. But as the mist swirls and thins in patches, you begin to discern shapes within it, not of trees but of spectral figures. Perhaps a silent procession of ancient priests, their robes flowing, carrying unseen objects to a forgotten, broken altar. Or a horde of spectral hunters, their phantom hounds baying silently as they chase ethereal prey through the timeless woods, their passage disturbing nothing but the air itself. These are panoramic echoes, moments of extreme emotional intensity that have been replayed countless times, imprinted on the very fabric of the landscape. They are not aware of you, a mere living interloper, but you are a trespasser in their eternal reenactment, a witness to their endless, tragic loop. These spectral sentinels serve as a constant reminder of the forest's profound connection to death and the unknown. They blur the lines between the living and the dead, between nature and the supernatural, making the entire ecosystem an anomaly. They are the forest's memory, its living history, replayed and refelt by anyone sensitive enough to perceive their presence. Their very existence reinforces the idea that these are not merely woods to be traversed, but sacred, dangerous grounds, where the veil between worlds is thin, sometimes transparent, allowing glimpses into the spectral realm. You become acutely aware of the stories embedded in the landscape. Each crooked branch, each moss-covered stone, each shadowy hollow seems to hold a secret, a tale of a life that ended here, a soul that found no peace. The forest is a vast, open graveyard, its inhabitants not buried beneath the soil, but lingering above it, within it, forever part of its ethereal ecosystem. Their sorrow is the forest's sorrow. Their ancient guard is the forest's enduring vigilance, a ceaseless watch over the boundaries of life and death. As you navigate these woods, you learn to read the subtle signs of their presence. The unnatural silence that descends upon a clearing, the sudden, bone-deep chill, the inexplicable feeling of dread that tightens your stomach, the fleeting glimpse of something that isn't quite there. These are not just superstitions. They are direct communications from the other side, warnings, pleas, or simply the unconscious manifestation of enduring pain. The spectral sentinels are not passive observers. They are an active, if often subtle, force shaping the atmosphere, the reputation, and the very danger of these cursed forests. Their influence weighs upon the air, making it heavy, making it difficult to breathe easy, making your heart pound with an primal, ancient fear. You are walking among ghosts, not just figurative ones, but literal remnants of lives lived and lost, now inextricably woven into the fabric of the wildwood. They are the true guardians of the wildwood's deepest, darkest mysteries, for they have seen all that has transpired, and they carry the weight of those millennia within their ethereal forms. They are the ancient souls, bound by tragedy or duty, forever watchful, forever present, forever lost within the timeless, suffocating embrace of the cursed trees. And you, walking through their ancient domain, are now part of their story, a fleeting, living presence in their eternal, spectral vigil, a momentary disturbance in their timeless, mournful realm. You have felt the chilling echo of those ancient souls, their spectral presence a heavy cloak around you, a constant reminder that these woods are not merely trees and earth. Now let your journey take you deeper still, into a forest whose very name evokes an ancient chill, a darkness so profound it has imprinted itself upon the human psyche for millennia. You are stepping now into the Schwarzwald, the Black Forest of Germany, a place where the grip of the wildwood is not just strong, but immutable, unchanging, a force woven into the very fabric of the land itself. Imagine yourself standing at its edge. The air here is different. It is cooler, always, even on the warmest summer day, and it carries the scent of pine needles, damp earth, and something else, something indefinable, a hint of something ancient and wild. Above you, the canopy begins to close in, a dense, dark ceiling of fir and spruce, so thick that the sunlight struggles to penetrate, breaking through only in fractured, shifting shafts that dance like phantom lights on the mossy forest floor. This is not a friendly wood. This is a place of deep shadows, of perpetual twilight, where the distinction between day and night seems to blur, and time itself feels different, slower, heavier. You push deeper, your boots crunching on fallen needles and twigs. The sounds of the modern world recede, replaced by the hushed whispers of the wind sifting through the needles high above, a sound that can feel like a sigh or a warning. Perhaps you hear the distant cry of a raptor, or the rustle of an unseen creature in the undergrowth, sounds that sharpen your senses, make you acutely aware of your isolation, your vulnerability. The trees here are not merely tall. They are colossal, ancient giants, their trunks scarred and gnarled, their roots snaking across the forest floor like the veins of some titanic, slumbering beast. Each one seems to stand as a silent, watchful sentinel, their dark branches reaching out, almost as if to ensnare you, to draw you further into their shadowy embrace. For centuries, this forest has held humanity in its thrall. The Romans who dared to venture here, called it Silva Nigra, the Black Wood, recognizing its inherent gloom and the danger it posed. To them, It was a barrier, a wild, untamed wilderness teeming with Germanic tribes who understood its secrets, who moved through its depths with an instinctual knowledge that outsiders could never truly grasp. Even then, its reputation was one of mystery and peril, a place where the veil between worlds seemed thin, where the mundane gave way to the magical and often the monstrous. As you walk, the path narrows, becoming less defined, swallowed by encroaching ferns and tangled roots. You find yourself navigating by instinct more than by sight, your eyes constantly scanning the shifting shadows, searching for something, anything that might betray a hidden presence. The silence here can be profound, a silence that presses in on your ears, making your own heartbeat sound unnaturally loud. But then a subtle shift, a sudden gust of wind, a creak from a mighty oak, and the silence is broken, only to return with an even greater intensity, making you wonder what moved, what watched, what waits just beyond your sight. The Black Forest is not merely a collection of trees, it is a repository of stories, a living, breathing archive of fear and folklore. It is here that tales of witches and goblins took root, nourished by the oppressive darkness and the isolation of its scattered settlements. You can almost feel the presence of Hansel and Gretel, forever lost among its gnarled boughs, their innocent footsteps leading them to a gingerbread house that promised sweetness but delivered terror. You sense the lurking shapeshifters, the forest spirits, the mythical creatures that inhabit the collective unconscious of generations, given form and power by the very gloom that surrounds you. Every valley holds its own whispered legend, every secluded lake its own drowned secret. You might pass by a moss-covered stone half buried in the earth, and feel a sudden chill, a prickle of unease, as if that stone marks a place of ancient sacrifice, a forgotten ritual or a boundary to another realm. The very air seems to hum with the echoes of these old tales, tales told around flickering fires, tales designed to warn, to protect, but ultimately, to instill a deep and abiding respect or perhaps a terror for the wild heart of the forest. The Black Forest grip is immutable because it is inherent. It is not a curse cast by a single event, but a character forged over millennia by its geography, its climate, its very essence. The dense, dark conifers, growing so close together they form a cathedral of shadow, naturally evoke a sense of the sublime and the terrifying. The deep valleys, carved by glaciers and rivers, become natural traps, places where sound is muffled, where fog lingers and where paths can easily be lost. The raw, untamed nature of this landscape fed the imagination, giving birth to the very idea of a haunted wilderness, a place where humanity is always on the defensive, always an intruder. You feel this ancient power now, an almost physical weight pressing down from the towering trees, a sensation that the forest itself is a sentient entity watching your every move. It is a slow, creeping dread, a knowledge that you are traversing a land that predates human memory, a land that has seen empires rise and fall, but has remained largely unchanged, unyielding. Its darkness is not merely an absence of light, it is an active presence, an energy that permeates the very air you breathe, settling into your bones, whispering doubt into your mind. Look closely at the gnarled bark of an ancient fir. You might imagine faces emerging from its patterns, distorted, watchful. The twisted branches, reaching out like skeletal fingers, seem to beckon you deeper or perhaps to warn you away. Every shadow seems to hold a fleeting shape, every distant sound a potential threat. Your senses become heightened, almost painfully so, as if the forest is stripping away the layers of your modern existence, forcing you to revert to a more primal state of awareness, a state of constant vigilance. This is the Black Forest's immutable grip. It is the feeling of being dwarfed, of being insignificant in the face of such ancient, enduring power. It is the realization that despite all human progress, there are still places on Earth that resist domestication, places that retain their wild, untamed spirit, places that harbor secrets far older and darker than any human history. The forest does not forgive easily. Remembers, it holds its legends close. and it ensures that those who enter its deepest reaches are never quite the same when or if they emerge. You are not merely walking through a forest. You are walking through time, through myth, through the very heart of European folklore. You are experiencing the primal fear that has haunted generations, the profound unease of being truly alone in a place that feels profoundly alive, profoundly watchful. The shadows lengthen even further now, not because the sun is setting, but because you have gone deeper into the core of its darkness, into the very soul of the Schwarzwald. And as you breathe in the heavy, resinous air, you realize that a part of this ancient, immutable darkness has begun to cling to you too, a silent, persistent echo in your own spirit, a part of the Black Forest's eternal, undeniable hold. You feel the forest's grasp, yes, but it is not always a grip of fear. Sometimes, it is an embrace, a gentle pull, a whisper that promises something more. This is the forest's most insidious power, its ability to tempt, to lure you with visions of wonder and the promise of untold secrets. It understands your desires, your deepest longings, and it knows exactly how to weave them into a web of irresistible illusion. Imagine you are a traveler, perhaps lost, perhaps seeking, wandering these ancient woods. The gloom you felt earlier might lift, replaced by a sudden, inexplicable feeling of warmth, of peace. A shaft of light pierces the canopy, illuminating a path you had not noticed before, a path that seems to beckon you forward, promising respite, perhaps even salvation. You follow, your weariness easing, your anxieties momentarily forgotten. The air might grow strangely sweet, carrying the scent of flowers unknown, or perhaps the faint aroma of freshly baked bread or a hearth fire. These are not real scents. They are echoes conjured by the forest itself, tailored to your subconscious needs. You hear a sound, perhaps a distant melody, a haunting song carried on the wind, or the laughter of children, or the gentle babbling of a brook that sounds like silver chimes. Your heart lightens. You believe you are nearing human habitation or a place of peace, a sanctuary. But the path you soon discover is an illusion. It winds deeper, not towards civilization, but further into the verdant maze. The sweetness in the air becomes cloying, the music subtly discordant, the laughter hollow. The light that guided you now seems to flicker, to dance just out of reach, like a mischievous sprite leading you astray. Yet you cannot turn back. The initial pull was too strong, the promise too compelling. You are ensnared. Ancient legends speak of such lures. The forest fae, the dryads, the sirens of the woods, they are not always malevolent in appearance. Sometimes they are beings of exquisite beauty, their voices like liquid gold, their eyes holding the wisdom of forgotten ages. They appear to those who are vulnerable, those who seek answers, those who hunger for knowledge or power beyond the mortal realm. They offer solace, companionship, and a glimpse into a world far richer, far more vibrant than your own. You might stumble upon a clearing bathed in an ethereal glow, where trees are laden with fruits of impossible color and jewels sprout from the mossy earth. Gold glitters in the stream, and ancient artifacts lie half-buried, waiting for discovery. This is not reality, but a potent, waking dream woven by the forest's will. It is a mirror reflecting your greed, your ambition, your desire for what is forbidden. You reach out, perhaps to touch a shimmering jewel, or to taste a succulent, otherworldly fruit. As your fingers brush against it, the illusion shimmers, wavers. The jewel might turn to brittle stone, the fruit to ash in your mouth. Or perhaps the enchantment holds and you consume it, feeling a rush of exhilaration, a surge of power that quickly turns to burning thirst, an insatiable hunger that can never be truly satisfied. The forest has many ways to tempt. For the scholar, it might reveal ancient texts, crumbling scrolls written in a language unknown yet strangely comprehensible. For the warrior, it might present a legendary weapon, glowing with an inner light, promising invincibility. For the lover, it might conjure the image of a lost beloved, a phantom embrace, a voice whispering words of eternal devotion. Each temptation is perfectly tailored, a reflection of the deepest yearnings of the human heart. But these gifts come at a price. The knowledge gained from the cursed scrolls might unravel your sanity, revealing truths too terrible for the human mind to bear. The legendary weapon might demand a blood price that drains your very life force, or it might turn against you, possessing your will. The phantom lover might draw you deeper and deeper into the forest's embrace, until you forget your own name, your own life, your own existence outside of that ephemeral connection. You might feel a strange compulsion to stay, to linger in this enchanted space. Time begins to warp. Hours feel like minutes, days like hours. The outside world, your responsibilities, your loved ones, they recede, becoming distant echoes, less real than the vibrant, intoxicating world the forest has created around you. You are losing yourself, piece by piece, willingly surrendering to its seductive pull. This is the lure to oblivion. It is not always a sudden, terrifying snatch into darkness. Often, it is a gradual erosion of self, a gentle drifting into forgetfulness, a slow embrace of an existence where nothing matters but the forest's whispers and its beautiful, deadly illusions. You become a part of its tapestry, another lost soul woven into its eternal, silent song. Your memories become entangled with its ancient roots, your identity absorbed by its vast, indifferent consciousness. Think of the old tales, people who followed fairy lights into bogs, never to be seen again. Those who drank from enchanted springs and lost all recollection of their former lives. Those who wandered into misty glades and danced with unseen entities until they collapsed from exhaustion, awakening years later to find their homes gone, their families long dead, their world transformed. The forest does not always kill you outright. Sometimes, it takes everything else, leaving behind an empty shell, a hollow echo of who you once were. You might try to resist. A sudden clarity might break through the enchantment, a fleeting memory of your true purpose, your real life. You try to turn, to retrace your steps, but the path has vanished. The familiar landmarks are gone, replaced by a bewildering sameness of trees, moss, and shadow. The enchanting music turns mocking, the sweet scents become putrid. The light that guided you now seems to mock you, dancing further and further away, pulling you deeper into the impenetrable gloom. The forest plays with you. It allows you a moment of hope, just enough to reignite your desperate struggle, only to extinguish it again, drawing you back into its labyrinthine embrace. The promise of escape becomes another cruel illusion. You realize that every step you took, every choice you made, was anticipated, orchestrated. The forest knew your weaknesses, your desires, and it used them to weave your personal prison. You are no longer a visitor, you are a captive. Not bound by chains, but by the subtle, irresistible threads of enchantment. You are part of its collection, another cautionary tale whispered by the wind through its ancient branches. Your bones might eventually join the countless others that lie hidden beneath the leaf litter, forgotten, undisturbed, absorbed back into the rich, dark soil from which the forest draws its eternal life. And even in this final descent into oblivion, there might be a strange, unsettling peace. A surrender to the inevitable. The forest, having taken everything else, finally offers a quiet repose. You are no longer tormented by the lure, no longer struggling against the unseen forces. You simply are absorbed, silent, forever part of the ancient, cursed woods. Your essence, perhaps, adds to its power, another tiny spark feeding the immense, dark heart of the forest. This is the ultimate temptation, the cessation of all struggle, the end of all pain, the complete absorption into something vast and indifferent. It is a seductive oblivion, promising an end to the weary journey, but at the cost of your very being. This isn't merely a physical threat, it's a spiritual consumption. The forest seeks to assimilate, to expand its consciousness, to claim all that dares to enter its sacred, forgotten domains. It wants your stories, your fears, your hopes, your very soul to weave into its endless narrative. You are not just lost, you are becoming the forest, a whisper among its leaves, a shadow within its depths. The silence that now falls is not an empty one. It is pregnant with the echoes of all those who succumbed to the forest's temptations. You might hear them, faint, distant voices, carried on the breeze, murmuring their lost hopes, their forgotten dreams. They are the forest's eternal chorus, a warning and a promise. A warning that you too can be absorbed, and a promise that, in doing so, you will become part of something truly ancient, truly powerful, truly eternal. But an eternity without self, without memory, without your own essence. That is the lure. That is the oblivion. And what becomes of that essence, that self, that memory once the forest has claimed it? Does it simply dissolve into the soil, into the root systems, a forgotten whisper? Or does it manifest, take form, become a part of the very arboreal architecture that surrounds you? You stand now in a clearing, if you can call it that, where the trees do not merely loom. They seem to writhe. Their branches, thick as an old man's arms, are not just gnarled with age but appear twisted with a profound internal agony. You can almost see the faces, contorted in silent screams, etched into the bark, eyes wide and hollow, mouths agape in a soundless wail. This is not imagination born of fear, not entirely. It is the language of the cursed forest made visible. Look closer at the trunks, the places where the bark is stripped or wounded. Do you see the sap? It is not just sticky resin. It oozes a dark, viscous liquid, sometimes amber, sometimes a deep, rusty red. It moves slowly, deliberately, like tears too heavy to fall quickly, tracing paths down the ancient wood. They call this the weeping sap, a phenomenon whispered about in hushed tones around campfires for centuries. The old ones, the wise women and the village elders, they spoke of trees that bled, trees that cried. And not for their own wounds, but for the sorrows they had absorbed, the countless tragedies witnessed, the lives extinguished beneath their eternal gaze. You hear the wind now, not merely rustling leaves but carrying a low, sustained groan. It is a sound that seems to vibrate from the very core of the forest, a collective lament. Is it the creaking of old wood under strain, or is it the symphony of forgotten voices, given resonance by the ancient sentinels that hold them within? These are the silent screamers, the arboreal mourners of ancient Europe, their roots plunged deep into soil saturated with blood and tears, their branches reaching towards a sky that has seen 1,000 generations of human suffering. For untold millennia, the forests of Europe were not just places of shelter or resources. They were living entities, imbued with spirit, often malevolent, always powerful. Our ancestors understood this. They knew that to enter certain groves was to tread upon hallowed, dangerous ground. They spoke of forest spirits, dryads and wood nymphs, yes, but also of darker entities, of trees possessed by the restless dead, or even by a primordial, destructive consciousness that predated humanity itself. Consider the ancient belief in the world tree, Yggdrasil to the Norse, the mighty oak of the Celts, connecting realms. If trees can connect worlds of gods and men, why not the world of the living to the world of the dead? Why not the realm of the physical to the ethereal plane where lost souls wander? These weeping trees, these silent screamers, are the physical manifestation of that connection, an anchor for the spectral, a monument to the forgotten. Imagine yourself in a forgotten grove deep within a sprawling European forest, perhaps in the Black Forest of Germany, or the ancient woodlands of Bohemia. The air grows heavy, thick with something more than just damp earth and decaying leaves. It is a density of emotion, a palpable sorrow that clings to your skin, seeps into your bones. The trees here are different. They do not welcome. They endure. They remember. You approach a colossal oak, its girth so immense you could not encircle it with 10 outstretched arms. Its bark is like a scarred tapestry, each furrow a lifetime, each knot a clenched fist. And from one deep fissure, you see it again, the slow, deliberate seep of that dark reddish sap. It pools at the base, staining the earth a rusty hue like dried blood. Is it merely a tree's reaction to injury, or is it the very essence of the forest's ancient pain, its accumulated grief, bubbling to the surface? The folklore of these lands speaks of trees planted on battlefields, or near ancient burial mounds, which would grow to embody the souls of the fallen. Their wood would be dark, dense, and unnaturally heavy. To cut such a tree was to release a cacophony of spectral wails, to unleash the tormented spirits it held captive. You would not dare touch an axe to such a trunk here. You feel that truth deep in your gut, a primal warning. Think of the whispering forests of Lithuania, where the pine trees are said to carry the echoes of forgotten battles, their needles rustling with the last breaths of warriors. Or the haunted forests of France, where specific oaks were believed to be portals to the underworld, their branches reaching like skeletal fingers, grasping at the unwary. These are not just stories to frighten children. They are echoes of a time when humanity lived in profound communion with the natural world, a communion that recognized its profound power, its capacity for both nurture and curse. The weeping trees are not merely witnesses to tragedy. They are participants. They drink from the tainted soil, from the sorrowful waters, from the very air heavy with the lamentations of the past. Their roots intertwine with the bones of the long dead, their branches reaching for the phantom limbs of forgotten sacrifices. They are the living archives of pain, their rings not just marking years, but epochs of suffering. As you move deeper, the light struggles to penetrate the canopy, leaving the forest floor in perpetual twilight. The shadows here are not fleeting. They are permanent fixtures, stretching and contracting with a life of their own, sometimes coalescing into vague, human-like forms at the periphery of your vision. You blink, and they are gone, absorbed back into the universal darkness that pulses beneath the ancient boughs. The very air seems to thicken around you. It is cold, despite the stillness, a chill that has nothing to do with the temperature of the day, but with the presence of something ancient and mournful. You feel a pressure, a vast, unseen weight, pressing down from the towering canopy above. It is the weight of countless unseen eyes, the collective gaze of all the silent screamers, observing you with an alien indifference, yet also with a profound, echoing sorrow. Do you feel it? The subtle thrumming beneath your feet? It is not just the vibration of the earth. It is the slow, deliberate pulse of the forest's vast, interconnected consciousness, a network of roots and mycelium, a living brain of unparalleled antiquity. And within that network, the data points are the memories of suffering, the experiences of death, the essence of souls devoured. The weeping sap is merely one visible symptom of this deep, underlying grief. Consider the bogs and swamps bordering these ancient woods, often considered gateways to other realms, places where the veil between worlds is thin. Many bog bodies have been found, perfectly preserved, victims of ancient rituals or brutal deaths. And what of the trees that grew around these sites? Did they not absorb the anguish, the sacrifice, the cold, silent horror of those final moments? Their wood would become infused, their very fibers saturated with the spectral residue of human fate. You touch the rough bark of a nearby birch, its usual pale skin stained with dark streaks like tears. It feels strangely cold, even clammy beneath your fingertips. There is no tremor, no outward sign of life beyond the steady, imperceptible growth that has continued for centuries. Yet you sense a profound stillness, a waiting. This tree, like so many others here, feels like a sentinel, a guardian of sorrow, a keeper of secrets too terrible for human tongues. The trees here do not speak in words, but in atmosphere, in the subtle currents of dread that ripple through the air, in the way the light dies amongst their leaves, in the constant, almost imperceptible groan of their ancient wood. They are the true historians of this land, recording every scream, every tear, every drop of blood spilled on the forest floor, not in scrolls or tablets, but in their very being, in the silent, oozing grief of their weeping sap. You are not merely walking through a forest. You are walking through a living mausoleum, a cathedral built of sorrow, where the very pillars are imbued with the lingering pain of the past. Each tree is a tombstone, and each drop of sap a tear for the dead it remembers, the dead it holds. These silent screamers are a testament to the enduring power of ancient European curses, the deep, dark magic that permeates the very heart of the wilderness. And you, walking among them, become a part of their ongoing, sorrowful narrative. The forest does not forget. And neither now do you? But what happens when the weight of that memory, the palpable sense of ancient dread, becomes too much to bear? What did those who lived amongst these living mausoleums do in the face of such overwhelming power? They sought to bargain. They sought to appease. They sought to make a pact. You see it now, the deep, primeval instinct to connect with the unseen forces, to offer a piece of oneself or one's harvest, or one's very blood, to the old gods of the forest. You stand at the edge of a clearing, the air heavy with an earthy scent, a scent of damp soil, decaying leaves, and something else, something metallic and faintly sweet. It is the lingering echo of countless offerings made over millennia. You are not simply observing a historical practice. You are enveloped in its aftermath, sensing the residual energy of desperate pleas and solemn vows. The ancients understood that these forests were not merely trees and earth. They were living, breathing entities, often capricious, sometimes benevolent, but always demanding respect and often a price. Imagine yourself in their sandals, your feet cold on the mossy ground. The sun, a distant memory beyond the dense canopy, sends only a fragmented, shifting light through the leaves, dappling the forest floor in an ethereal glow. A group of villagers gathers, their faces etched with a mix of fear and reverence. They are here for one purpose: to placate the spirits, to seek a blessing, or perhaps to avert a curse. You can almost hear the soft murmur of their prayers, low and guttural, carried on the wind that rustles the ancient branches above. Their offerings are varied, testament to the diverse needs and beliefs of the time. You see baskets woven from willow filled with the season's first fruits, plump berries, and freshly harvested grains. These are offerings of gratitude, a hopeful exchange for continued fertility and bounty. A young woman, her hair braided with wildflowers, carefully places a small, intricately carved wooden figure at the base of a towering oak, its bark grooved like the face of an ancient patriarch. This is an offering for protection, perhaps for a safe journey or for a healthy child. Her whispered words are swallowed by the vastness of the woods, yet you feel their intent reverberate through the very ground beneath your feet. But not all offerings were so gentle. Look closely. Here, beside a gnarled, root-bound boulder, a crudely fashioned stone altar is stained dark. The stains are old, weathered by rain and time, but their origin is unmistakable. This is where the blood sacrifices were made. You do not witness the act, but the impression of it hangs in the air, a chilling testament to the lengths to which people would go to gain favor or avert disaster. A small animal, a lamb or a goat, its life poured out onto the sacred stone, its spirit sent as a messenger, a plea to the unseen powers that govern the forest. The air feels colder here, heavier, as if the echoes of past terror still cling to the ancient stones. These were not acts of cruelty for cruelty's sake, but acts of profound necessity in a world where the natural elements held undeniable power. A harsh winter could mean starvation. A failed harvest, widespread famine. A plague, the decimation of a village. When faced with such existential threats, human beings turned to the oldest, most powerful entities they knew, the spirits of the earth, the forest, the waters. The old gods were not distant, abstract deities. They were immanent. They resided in the heart of the ancient oaks, in the depths of the black bogs, in the rushing currents of the untamed rivers. To them, offerings were a form of communion, a tangible link between the human world and the sacred, often terrifying, natural world. You can feel the weight of that belief pressing down on you, the understanding that every rustle of leaves, every groan of timber could be a response, a sign, a blessing or a curse. Sometimes the offerings were more personal, more desperate. You imagine a hunter, lost and disoriented in the deepening twilight, his desperate cries echoing through the silent trees. Panic sets in, the realization that he has stumbled into a territory not meant for mortals. He might have pulled a prized possession from his satchel, a bronze amulet, a finely crafted knife, and buried it at the base of a particularly imposing tree, murmuring frantic prayers for guidance, for passage, for his very life. These votive offerings, buried deep in the earth, were intended to bribe the spirits of the forest, to buy safe passage, to beg for mercy. You can still feel the faint tremor of his fear in the very air. Consider the bogs, those vast, watery graves that punctuate the ancient European landscape. They were not merely wetlands, they were sacred sites, thresholds between worlds. Here offerings took on a different, more chilling character. You can almost see the glint of sunlight on bronze artifacts, swords, shields, ceremonial horns, carefully deposited into the murky depths. These were not simply lost items. They were deliberate gifts, often from chieftains or warriors, sacrifices of valuable possessions to ensure victory in battle, or to thank the gods for a triumphant return. The bog preserved them, a silent museum of devotion and dread. And sometimes the bog claimed more than just metal. Human sacrifice, while rare and often debated in its extent, was a terrifying reality in certain contexts, particularly during times of extreme crisis. You stand near a patch of ground where the earth feels subtly disturbed, as if it has swallowed something immense and unsettling. Here, a desperate community facing an inexplicable blight or an unceasing drought might have made the ultimate offering. A human life, a precious individual, given over to the forest, to the bog, to the earth, in the desperate hope of appeasing a wrathful deity and restoring balance. The quiet horror of such an act reverberates through the very air, a deep, sorrowful ache that lingers across the centuries. It is a sacrifice born not of malice, but of profound terror and a fierce will to survive. These pacts, whether of grain or blood, were attempts to manage the untamable, to forge a relationship with the forces that could bring both life and death. The people of ancient Europe understood that the forest held immense power, a consciousness older than any human civilization. Their offerings were not merely rituals, they were conversations, negotiations, pleas. And what did the forest offer in return? Sometimes protection, sometimes abundance, often silence, but always remembrance. Every offering, every whispered prayer, every drop of spilled blood, became woven into the fabric of the forest's being. They became part of its memory, its energy, its very curse. The lingering power of these offerings, the deep imprints of human fear and hope, still permeate the cursed groves. You can feel it. The trees stand not just as witnesses, but as receptacles, holding within their ancient wood the echoes of every pagan pact ever made, every desperate bargain, every offering laid at the feet of the old gods. And the forest, in its vast, silent wisdom, never forgets the terms of those ancient agreements, nor the consequences of breaking them. You stand at the edge of the ancient woods. The light here is different, dappled and fragmented, filtering through a canopy so thick it feels like a cathedral ceiling woven from leaves and time. There is no clear path ahead, only a suggestion of darkness, an invitation into a world that breathes with a different rhythm. The old stories whisper that these forests do not merely exist, they remember. They remember every footfall, every whispered prayer, every desperate scream. And sometimes they remember you. You take your first tentative steps beneath the boughs. The air grows cooler, heavier, carrying the scent of damp earth, decaying leaves and something else. Something metallic like forgotten blood, or perhaps just the mineral tang of ancient stone hidden beneath the roots. The sounds of the outside world begin to fade. The chirping of birds becomes muted, the distant rush of a river recedes into a low hum. Here, the dominant sound is the wind, a restless breath moving through the countless leaves, an endless, sighing conversation that seems to swirl around you, seeking to enter your thoughts, to plant seeds of doubt. You try to follow what appears to be a faint trail, a deer track perhaps, or a path worn by generations of long-lost pilgrims. But within moments the path dissolves. The trees seem to shift, to close in. One mighty oak, twisted and gnarled, looks identical to the one you passed moments ago. Its bark, ancient and scarred, seems to form patterns that almost resemble faces watching your every move. You glance back, seeking the sun's direction, but the canopy is a dense, green ceiling. The light you saw just moments ago, that welcoming dappled glow, has vanished, replaced by an even, diffuse twilight that makes it impossible to gauge the time of day or your direction. This is not simply a forest. It is a living labyrinth, one that delights in misdirection, in the slow unspooling of your certainty. The ground beneath your feet becomes uneven. Roots like grasping fingers snake across the forest floor, tripping hazards hidden beneath a blanket of moss and fallen leaves. Each step is uncertain, a gamble against the hidden dangers. You find yourself pushing through dense undergrowth, thorny branches clawing at your clothes, leaving tiny scratches on your exposed skin, small crimson offerings to the silent watching trees. A prickle of unease begins to crawl up your spine. It is not just the physical effort. It is the growing sense of isolation, of being utterly alone, yet profoundly watched by unseen eyes that seem to pierce through the gloom. You pause, listening intently. Did you hear something? A faint rustling, closer than the wind, like something unseen moving through the dense foliage just beyond your sight, echoing your own cautious movements. Or was it merely the trick of the wind, playing on your heightened senses, making you question your own perceptions? The trees themselves seem to lean in, their ancient trunks like silent sentinels, their branches reaching, intertwining, forming a natural cage around you, a trap of wood and shadow. Every shadow seems to deepen, to coalesce into something almost tangible, a fleeting form in the corner of your eye. This is where the unseen paths truly begin. Not just the physical trails that vanish and reappear, leading you further into the unknown, but the psychological ones. The paths that lead you away from logic, away from certainty, into a realm where the ancient magic of the forest holds sway. The fear begins to creep in, a cold, insidious dread that whispers of being trapped, of becoming another lost soul swallowed by the vast, indifferent green, becoming nothing more than another forgotten story. The stories say that these forests are places where the veil between worlds is thin, where the spirits of the long dead wander, eternally bound to the ground where their bones lie. Perhaps they were ancient warriors, fallen in forgotten battles, their screams now carried on the wind, forever echoing their final moments. Perhaps they were victims of sacrifice, their spirits forever seeking release from the sacred groves, unable to break free from the ancient agreements that sealed their fate. Or perhaps, most tragically, they were simply travelers like you, who ventured too deep, became disoriented by the forest's cunning, and succumbed to its relentless embrace, their life force slowly drained away. You might hear their voices, a low murmur at first, just at the edge of hearing, like many people speaking at once, their words indistinguishable, a chaotic chorus of the lost. Then, perhaps, a single, clear whisper calling your name so distinct you might swear someone stands just behind you. Or a snippet of an ancient song, mournful and haunting, weaving itself into the rustle of the leaves, a melody that stirs a primal sadness within you. Is it real? Is it the wind playing a cruel trick on your mind? Or is it the forest itself, mimicking the voices of the lost to draw you deeper into its heart, into its inescapable embrace? The forest is a master of illusion, a weaver of deceptions, designed to test your resolve, to break your will, to claim your spirit as its own. It is in these moments of profound disorientation that the forest truly becomes a labyrinth of lost souls. Not just because it physically traps you, making every direction seem wrong, but because it begins to erode your sense of self, your connection to the world you left behind. You begin to question your memories, your decisions. Was that turn you took truly the right one, or was it a cunning trick of the terrain? Did you hear that sound or imagine it, the product of a mind under duress? The line between reality and hallucination blurs, thins, and threatens to break entirely, leaving you adrift in a sea of uncertainty. The forest has always been a place of transformation, a crucible. For those who enter with reverence and respect, with a pure heart and humble intentions, it can offer profound wisdom, healing, and connection to something ancient and powerful. But for those who stumble into its cursed depths, unprepared, heedless of the old ways, it offers a different kind of transformation, a slow, agonizing descent into madness or into oblivion. The ancient stories speak of people who wandered these woods for days, weeks, even years, their minds unraveling with each passing moment, their humanity slowly stripped away. They spoke of seeing apparitions that were too vivid to be dreams, of being stalked by unseen entities that moved just beyond the edge of their vision, of feeling the cold breath of ancient spirits on their necks, chilling them to the very bone. You might feel a sudden chill, a pocket of air far colder than the surrounding gloom, even though no breeze stirred the leaves, a presence drawing energy from the very air around you. It might brush past you like an invisible hand, raising goosebumps on your skin. The hairs on your arms stand on end. You might catch a fleeting glimpse of something in your peripheral vision, a pale, drawn face among the trees, its eyes empty and ancient, or a flicker of movement, swift and unnatural, that vanishes the instant you turn your head to confront it. Your heart begins to pound, a frantic drumbeat against the overwhelming silence of the woods, a desperate rhythm of fear. The forest plays with your senses, turning them against you. What looks like a welcoming, sunlit clearing might be a treacherous bog, hidden beneath a deceptively vibrant carpet of moss, waiting to swallow you whole. What seems to be the familiar call of a bird, a comforting sound, might be a distorted mimicry, a cunning lure designed to draw you further off course, deeper into the tangled heart of the maze. The trees themselves seem to twist into grotesque shapes, their branches like skeletal arms reaching out, their gnarled trunks like gaping mouths frozen in a silent scream. You are walking through a dreamscape, a waking nightmare made real, fashioned from the collective fears and superstitions of countless generations who have walked this cursed ground before you. And then, perhaps, through a break in the trees, you stumble upon a sign. Not a human-made marker, a forgotten trail sign, but something far older, far more unsettling. A stone altar, overgrown with ivy and moss, darkened by centuries of exposure, its surface perhaps still bearing the faint, unsettling stains of ancient sacrifice, a testament to deeds best forgotten. Or a cluster of 9 trees, bound together by thick, iron-like vines, their branches woven into a natural archway that feels less like a natural phenomenon and more like a deliberate construction, a gateway to something ancient, powerful, and deeply disturbing. These are the crossroads, the thresholds, the points of no return. Places where the power of the forest is at its most potent, where the spirits gather, where the echoes of ancient pacts are strongest, thrumming in the very air. To pass through such a place is to invite its attention, to become part of its story whether you wish to or not. The forest has a hunger, not for blood in every instance, but for attention, for remembrance, for the energy of living beings, for the raw emotion of fear and desperation. And a lost soul, filled with fear and desperation, its resolve weakening, is a potent offering ripe for consumption. You realize that the real labyrinth is not just the physical expanse of the trees, the bewildering twists and turns of its overgrown paths, but the intricate web of ancient energies, lost spirits, and primal fears that permeate every inch of this cursed ground. Each rustle, each creak, each shadow plays a deliberate part in guiding you, or more accurately, misguiding you deeper into its embrace. It is a slow seduction, a gradual consumption, a drawing in that you might not even realize until it is too late. The forest desires to keep you, to add your story, your spirit, to its unending collection of forgotten things, to its own vast and terrible memory. To be lost here is to be truly lost. Not just geographically, losing your bearings in the physical world, but existentially. You begin to forget the names of those you love, the way home, even your own name, your own history. Your identity starts to fray, dissolving into the vast, ancient memory of the forest, becoming indistinct, like a whisper fading into the wind. You become another whisper on the wind, another pale face glimpsed in the shadows, another forgotten tale woven into the bark of the oldest trees, a silent sentinel in the labyrinth. The unseen paths lead ultimately to this, a merging with the forest itself. Your fears, your hopes, your lingering essence, absorbed into its collective consciousness, feeding its ancient power. You become part of the labyrinth, another one of its silent, ethereal guides, forever bound to the cursed groves, awaiting the next unsuspecting traveler who dares to venture into the unseen paths, who seeks to unravel the secrets of the labyrinth of lost souls. And the forest, in its vast, silent wisdom, merely adds another chapter to its unending, terrifying saga, its eternal collection of spirits claimed and stories untold. You are now simply part of the hushed, ancient tapestry of this place. The wind whispers through your unseen form, carrying with it the scent of damp earth and distant wood smoke. You begin to understand the forest not as a collection of trees, but as a vast, breathing entity, one that held the Iron Age peoples in its chilling thrall. Their lives, their very survival, were utterly intertwined with these shadowed woods, forests they knew were both giver of life and taker of souls. Imagine yourself not as a spirit, but as a living, breathing person in that distant time. You stand on the edge of the deep woods, perhaps a small settlement behind you, its wattle and daub huts huddled against the encroaching darkness. The air is cold, thick with the smell of wood smoke from hearth fires, and a primal fear grips you. This is not just a place for hunting or gathering, this is a realm imbued with potent, often terrifying power. The forest spirits, the old gods, they watch from the shadows, their moods as unpredictable as the weather. Every rustle in the undergrowth, every sudden gust of wind, every peculiar bird cry, it is not merely nature at play. To the Iron Age mind, it is a message, an omen. The snap of a twig when no creature is visible, the hoot of an owl at midday, the sight of a white stag disappearing into the deepest thickets. These are signs, communications from the unseen world. You learn to read them, to interpret their meaning, for your very existence depends on it. A flight of ravens to the east might signal good hunting, but a solitary raven circling your home 3 times could portend ill fortune, perhaps even death. Superstition is not a choice here. It is woven into the fabric of daily life. Before venturing into the woods for firewood, you make a small offering at the boundary, perhaps a handful of grain, a piece of your bread, or a simple iron amulet. You whisper a prayer to the spirits of the trees, asking for safe passage, for permission to take what you need. You never cut down an ancient oak without considerable trepidation, for it could be a dwelling place of a powerful forest deity. To disrespect it would be to invite disaster upon your family, upon your entire community. Certain groves are strictly forbidden, even to the most desperate hunter. You know these places by their silence, a profound quiet that feels unnatural, where the birdsong ceases and the light seems to dim even at noon. These are the sacred, or perhaps cursed, sites where the spirits hold absolute dominion. To enter them without proper ritual, without immense reverence, is to court madness or a swift, brutal end. When crops fail, when disease sweeps through the village, when a loved one vanishes without a trace, the answer often lies in the forest. You have angered the spirits. You have failed to honor the old ways. And so, the community turns to its most solemn and terrifying practice: sacrifice. You would gather at a designated clearing, perhaps around a gnarled, ancient tree or by a dark, still pool fed by an underground spring. The air would be thick with tension, the flickering firelight casting long, dancing shadows that seemed to mimic the shapes of hungry spirits. The druid or the tribal shaman would lead the ceremony. Their voice, a low chant, would rise and fall, invoking the names of gods whose power touched every aspect of your world. The nature of the sacrifice varied. Often it would be a prized animal, a magnificent bull, a sow, or a flock of valuable chickens. You would watch, a knot of fear and awe in your gut, as the animal was led to the altar, its blood spilled not in violence, but in a profound act of appeasement. The steaming entrails might be read for further omens, their patterns revealing the will of the gods. Then, parts of the animal or perhaps its entire body would be offered to the forest itself, perhaps submerged in a bog, or hung from the branches of a sacred tree, left for the spirits to consume. But there were darker, more desperate times. When the harvest failed for the second year in a row, when rival tribes threatened invasion, when a mysterious plague afflicted half the village, the need for a greater offering arose. In the deepest, most isolated parts of the forest, archaeologists have found evidence of these extreme acts of devotion. Bodies preserved in peat bogs, not simply buried but seemingly offered to the earth itself. These were not murders in the modern sense, but grim, desperate attempts to placate vengeful deities, to ensure the survival of the many at the cost of one. Imagine the somber procession, the quiet dread, as one of your own, perhaps a captive from a rival tribe, or even a community member chosen by grim lot, was led into the mist-shrouded depths. The hope was that this ultimate gift, this perfect offering, would appease the hungry earth, would satisfy the ancient spirits and turn their wrath away from your people. Survival in the Iron Age was a delicate dance with the natural world, a world seen through a lens of profound spirituality and ever-present danger. The forest was not merely a backdrop to your life, it was a character in your story, a demanding, powerful, and often terrifying entity that had to be respected, appeased, and understood. Every breath you took, every step you made was under its watchful, ancient gaze. You lived by its rules, for to defy them was to risk not just your own life, but the very existence of your tribe. The omens, the rituals, the sacrifices, these were not quaint customs, but critical tools for navigating a world alive with unseen forces, a world where the line between the sacred and the terrifying was impossibly thin, and where the forest held the ultimate power over your fate. Segment 12. The Forest's Fury, Nature's Primal Curse. You understand the power of the forest. You offer your sacrifices, you perform the rites, you walk with reverence. Yet, a cold dread persists, a primal fear no offering can quell. For even when appeased, the forest holds a darker, untamed aspect, a profound malevolence that lashes out with terrifying force. It is not merely indifferent, at times it is actively hostile, a source of primal curses. Imagine standing at the edge of the ancient woods as the sun begins its slow descent. The vibrant greens of day bleed into deepening shadows. The air grows heavy, thick with damp earth, decaying leaves, and something else, something less tangible. A hint of ancient sorrow, of forgotten terrors. You feel the forest watching you, not with a benign gaze, but with the narrowed, calculating eyes of a predator. Every rustle of leaves, every snap of a twig, sounds like a deliberate movement, an unseen entity stirring in the deepening gloom. Here, the forest's fury truly begins to manifest. It is not just the obvious dangers of a wild land. It is a more insidious threat, one that twists reality within its depths. You hear stories, hushed around the communal fire, of hunters who vanished, not by beast or trap, but by the forest itself. They entered a familiar path, one trodden 100 times, only for the trees to close in, markers to disappear, the way back becoming an impenetrable wall of thorns and shadow. You learn the forest can steal your sense of direction, confuse your mind, and lead you deeper and deeper, until you are hopelessly lost, disoriented, and utterly alone. Your elders speak of the forest's curse, a dark energy permeating certain groves. These are places where the sun struggles to penetrate even at midday, where the ground feels unnaturally cold, where trees twist into grotesque shapes, their branches like grasping claws. You know not to step foot here. To do so is to invite ill fortune, to feel a creeping sickness enter your bones, to hear whispers not of wind, but voices of those trapped within its ancient, vengeful embrace. You might emerge but not whole. A part of your spirit could remain forever entwined with the cursed earth, leaving you hollow, distant, perhaps even mad. The creatures of the forest also take on a sinister aspect when fueled by this primal curse. You fear the wolf and the bear, yes, but you fear more those driven by an unnatural hunger, an insatiable rage emanating from the very trees. These are not just animals seeking prey, they are instruments of the forest's wrath, imbued with a ferocity defying natural explanation. Their eyes glow with an unnatural light, their growls carry a chilling echo of ancient malevolence. You understand some beasts are not born of flesh and blood alone, but birthed from the forest's darkest humors, sent forth to punish the unwary or disrespectful. Sometimes the forest's fury manifests less as direct attack and more as pervasive, suffocating dread. You might find yourself in a clearing where the air feels wrong, where no bird sings and no insect hums. A profound silence descends, pressing in on your ears, making your own heartbeat sound like a drum in the vast stillness. Here you feel an unseen presence, a heavy weight threatening to crush your spirit. It is the forest breathing, a slow, ancient breath that chills you, reminding you of its immense, indifferent power to extinguish life and hope. Even the plants beneath your feet can be instruments of this curse. You know the herbs that heal and the berries that nourish, but also the strange, pallid fungi sprouting in the deepest, darkest wood, causing debilitating illness or visions of terror. These are not just poisonous. They are tainted carriers of the forest's sickness, spreading its malevolence through the ground you walk on. You learn to recognize the signs: dark sap, wilting leaves on thriving branches, a sudden proliferation of thorny, tangled vines tripping your every step. These are not accidents. They are deliberate acts of a forest that has decided you are no longer welcome. You live with the knowledge the forest can call forth elements against you. A clear, sunny morning can turn in an instant to a raging tempest once you venture too far. The wind howls through trees, a banshee's cry, tearing at your shelter, threatening to uproot oaks. Torrents of rain swell rivers, cutting off escape, turning familiar paths into treacherous mudslides. Dense, unnatural fogs descend without warning, thick as a shroud, blinding you, disorienting you, making every tree a looming, unknown threat. You understand these are not mere weather patterns. They are the forest's moods, its expressions of fury, its way of asserting dominance and reminding you of your fragility. The spirits within cursed groves are not always benevolent. While some are protective, others are vengeful, holding ancient grievances, demanding tribute, or inflicting punishment upon those who trespass without proper respect. You hear tales of glades where children's laughter can be heard, but no children are there. Of mournful cries echoing through valleys, drawing the unwary deeper into the woods, never to return. These are the echoes of the forest's past, shadows of its victims, woven into the very fabric of trees and earth. You learn to listen not just for sounds of life, but for sounds of what should not be, for disquieting noises signifying the presence of something ancient and malevolent. To cut down a tree without proper ritual, disturb an ancient stone, or enter a hallowed place with ill intent. These transgressions invite the forest's personal curse. The punishment is swift and often devastating. Your crops might fail, your livestock sicken, your family members fall ill with a mysterious wasting disease. The forest does not forget. It remembers every disrespect, every careless act, holding grudges for generations. Its retribution is slow, persistent, undeniable, a creeping dread settling over your village, a tangible weight of misfortune only deep penance or another, even greater sacrifice might appease. The very idea of a cursed forest permeates your understanding of the world. It is not just an arbitrary place of danger. It is a place imbued with a negative spirit, a malevolent consciousness actively seeking to harm, punish, reclaim. These are places where ancient battles were fought, where forgotten gods were defied, where terrible acts of violence and sorrow have steeped the earth in despair. The forest, in its vast, encompassing way, absorbs these energies, becoming a living repository of primal dread. Its roots delve into the heart of the earth's suffering, and its branches reach into the sky, pulling down shadows of the past. You do not conquer such a forest. You merely survive at its fringes, constantly vigilant, respectful, aware of the thin veil separating your fragile human world from its untamed, formidable, often furious dominion. Your settlements are built with protection in mind, not just from human foes, but from the encroaching darkness of the woods. Palisade walls and watchtowers defy the malevolent spirit of the trees. You burn your fires bright, not just for warmth, but to push back shadows, to remind yourself and unseen forces that you still exist, however precariously, in its terrifying realm. The silence of a moonless night, when the forest is a vast, black wall against the horizon, is not peaceful. It is pregnant with unseen threats, with the rustle of leaves that might be an animal or something far older, far more sinister. You learn to interpret the wind not just as a natural force, but as a voice, carrying warnings or portents from the deep woods. The way the branches sway, the sound they make against each other, it all tells a story, a dark prophecy of what the forest's fury might unleash next. You stand on the edge of a vast, impenetrable forest, centuries after those ancient whispers first began. The sun, a pale disk in a sky often bruised with heavy clouds, struggles to penetrate the dense canopy that looms before you. This is not just a collection of trees and undergrowth. It is a living monument to the fears and beliefs of countless generations. The curses born in the shadowed clearings of distant antiquity did not dissipate with the dawn of new eras. Instead, they adapted, shape-shifted, and settled into the very roots of European folklore, an unbroken lineage of dread that echoes through the ages. Imagine yourself as an early Roman legionary, pushing north into lands considered barbaric and untamed. You have heard the stories of the German tribes, their fierce warriors, and their reverence for the vast, dark woods they call home. These are not merely strategic obstacles for you. They are places of pagan ritual, sacrifice, and unseen dangers. Your Roman gods, so orderly and predictable, seem distant here. You see the deep, almost palpable respect in the eyes of the locals when they speak of certain groves, certain ancient trees, places where no one dares to fell timber or even set foot after dusk. They tell you of travelers who vanish without a trace, of strange sounds carried on the wind, of misfortunes befalling those who desecrate these hallowed, cursed grounds. The forest itself seems to resist your ordered advance, its dense undergrowth and confusing pathways feeling less like natural terrain and more like a deliberate, hostile intelligence. The Teutoburg forest, where 3 Roman legions were annihilated, might well have been seen by the survivors as a place cursed by the very gods of the barbarians. Centuries pass. The Roman Empire recedes, and the grip of early Christianity begins to spread across the continent. Yet the old gods, the ancient spirits of the forest, do not simply vanish. They are not forgotten, they are transformed. The once revered sacred groves become the haunts of devils, witches, and malevolent sprites in the new theological framework. The fear persists, merely rebranded. You walk through a medieval village, its wooden houses huddled together for protection against the enveloping darkness. The forest, still vast and mysterious, presses in on all sides. Children are warned not to stray too far, not to enter the deep woods alone. Tales are whispered around hearth fires of changelings, of people led astray by mischievous imps, of wolves with unnatural intelligence, and of terrifying, unseen entities that dwell in the deepest shadows. The ancient curse, once a pagan taboo, now manifests as a constant spiritual threat, a battleground between good and evil. The Church, in its mission to Christianize, often chose sites of pagan worship to build its chapels and cathedrals. Sometimes these were places of springs or hilltops. Other times, they were clearings within the very heart of these supposedly cursed forests. You witnessed the attempts to consecrate these spaces, to bring divine light into the pagan gloom. Yet the sense of unease lingers. The very air feels heavier here, the silence more profound, the shadows longer and more watchful. Even the priests, for all their righteous pronouncements, carry a certain caution in their eyes when they speak of the ancient woods. They know that belief runs deeper than doctrine, that the primal fear of the unknown cannot simply be exorcised with holy water and prayer. The forest remembers, and it subtly resists, its deep roots intertwined with the very fabric of the landscape and the human psyche. Move forward in time to the era of the witch hunts, a dark chapter in European history. You see the fear of the forest intertwine with a rampant paranoia. The deep woods become the meeting places for covens, the refuge for hermits and outcasts, and a breeding ground for suspicion. If a misfortune befalls a village, if crops fail or livestock sicken or a child falls ill, the finger of blame often points to those who live on the fringes, to those who are perceived to draw power from the untamed wild. The forest, once merely a place of inherent danger, is now actively malicious, a source of dark magic and malevolent intent, its curse directed by human agents. You witness the terrified accusations, the desperate attempts to purge the land of its perceived evil, all stemming from an ancient, ingrained fear of the wild places and the unseen powers attributed to them. Even as the Age of Enlightenment dawns, bringing with it a fervent belief in reason and scientific understanding, the forest's ancient grip does not entirely loosen. Cartographers map its every bend, loggers fell its trees, and engineers carve roads through its heart. Yet the old stories persist, passed down through generations. They become folk tales, children's rhymes, cautionary legends. You hear a grandmother warn her grandchild not to go into the whispering woods after dark, not because of witches anymore perhaps, but because bad things happen there. The specific details of the curse may have faded, but the underlying sentiment, the ingrained taboo remains. The sense of an unseen presence, a feeling of being watched, an inexplicable chill in certain groves, continues to manifest for those who dare to venture deep within. Think of the enduring architectural impact. Castles, monasteries, and even later settlements were often built with defensive walls facing the forest, a clear sign of the perceived threat emanating from its depths. You observe how strategically important forests were, not just for resources but as natural barriers against invaders, and conversely as perfect hiding places for bandits and outlaws. The deep woods represented a loss of control, a space beyond the reach of law and order, a place where the rules of civilization did not apply. This is a curse of chaos, an unpredictable force that undermines human endeavor. The unbroken curse is not always a dramatic pronouncement or a thunderous magical event. More often, it is a subtle but persistent influence. It is the inexplicable loss of direction even with a compass, the feeling of a heavy weight on your chest when you are deep in a particular ancient grove, the sudden sharp drop in temperature even on a warm day, or the complete silence where there should be birdsong. It is the way the light dies differently, the way shadows seem to move just at the periphery of your vision. It is the subtle, pervasive feeling of not being alone, even when you know you are. This persistent unease, passed down through cultural memory and personal experience, is the true echo of the ancient forest's power. Consider the psychological impact. For millennia, these forests represented the ultimate unknown, the boundary between the human world and something wilder, something primal. This collective anxiety, this ingrained respect bordering on terror, has shaped the European psyche. You see it in the dark undertones of fairy tales, in the brooding landscapes of romantic literature, even in modern horror films that tap into our ancient fears of the wilderness. The forest curse is a reminder of our vulnerability, of the limits of our control, and of the enduring power of nature to inspire both awe and profound dread. You trace the path of a stream through a part of the forest rumored to be particularly ill-fated. The water runs unusually cold even in summer. The trees here are twisted, their branches like grasping claws, their bark covered in thick, dark moss. No birds sing. The air is still, heavy, almost suffocating. You feel an urge to turn back, a primal instinct overriding any rational explanation. This is not just imagination. This is the weight of centuries of human experience, of fear and legend, resonating within this very landscape. The curse is not merely a story, it is a palpable atmosphere, an energy imprinted upon the very earth and air. The unbroken curse speaks of consequences for disrespect. Those who sought to exploit the forest without reverence, who defiled its sacred spaces, often met with misfortune, whether through the intervention of vengeful spirits, the loss of their way, or inexplicable accidents. This is not just superstition. It is a mechanism of ecological and cultural preservation, a way to ensure the long-term health of these vital ecosystems by instilling a healthy fear in those who would harm them. The curse is a protector, albeit a terrifying one. Ultimately, the unbroken curse of ancient European forests is a testament to the enduring power of place, of collective memory, and of the human imagination's ability to imbue the natural world with profound meaning. It reminds us that history is not just a series of events but a living, breathing tapestry of belief and experience, constantly shaping our perception of the world around us. The forest, ancient and eternal, continues to hold its secrets, its power, and its chilling, unbroken curse. It demands your attention, your respect, and perhaps a quiet understanding that some forces are truly beyond our grasp. The echoes are still here if you listen closely enough.